My name is Detective James Carter, and I've spent 23 years investigating crimes for the Metropolitan Transit Authority. I've seen suicides on tracks, derailments, terrorist threats, every nightmare that can happen in the underground world of subway systems and rail networks. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened on the morning of October 15th, when the North Line Express entered the Blackwood Tunnel and simply vanished. The call came at 9:47 a.m. I was at my desk, reviewing surveillance footage from a pickpocketing case, when my phone exploded with alerts. Transit Control, Emergency Services, the Commissioner, everyone calling at once. I answered the Commissioner first. "Carter, we have a code black situation. North Line Express departed Central Station at 9:15 a.m. with approximately 500 passengers. It entered Blackwood Tunnel at 9:32 a.m. and never came out the other side." I felt my stomach drop. The Blackwood Tunnel was a 15-minute passage through the mountain that separated the northern suburbs from the city center. Trains went through it every 20 minutes during rush hour. It was one of the busiest routes in the entire system. What do you mean it never came out? Is it stopped inside? We don't know. All communication with the train ceased the moment it entered the tunnel. No response from the conductor, no signal from the train's tracking system, nothing. It's like it disappeared into thin air. I grabbed my jacket and badge. I'm on my way to the South Tunnel entrance. Get emergency crews there now. And shut down all traffic through Blackwood. I don't want another train going in until we know what's happening. The drive to the tunnel took 30 minutes through morning traffic that felt like hours. My mind raced through possibilities. Derailment? But we'd have impact sensors that would trigger. Power failure? The trains had backup communication systems. Terrorist attack? But why no explosion, no debris, no signals of any kind? When I arrived at the south entrance of Blackwood Tunnel, the scene was chaos. Emergency vehicles lined the access road, their lights flashing against the dark mouth of the tunnel. News helicopters circled overhead. Families of passengers had already started gathering, their faces twisted with fear and confusion. I found Transit Control Chief, Margaret Hayes, standing at a mobile command center, surrounded by monitors and frantic technicians. Her face was pale, her usual composure shattered. "Status report," I demanded. She pulled up a display on the main monitor. At 9:32 and 17 seconds a.m., North Line Express entered Blackwood Tunnel, traveling at standard speed of 80 km per hour. At 9:32 and 35 seconds a.m., 18 seconds after entry, all signals ceased. No GPS, no emergency beacon, no communication system. 18 seconds, Carter. The train was barely a quarter mile into a 10-mile tunnel. What about the tracking system? Every meter of that tunnel has sensors. That's what's impossible. The sensors show the train entered, but they never registered it passing any of the checkpoints inside the tunnel. It's like the train entered and then ceased to exist. I stared at the dark tunnel entrance, a massive concrete mouth that seemed to swallow light itself. "Have you sent anyone in?" "We sent a maintenance crew in a vehicle 20 minutes ago. They should be reaching the train's last known position any minute now." A radio crackled to life. "Command, this is Maintenance Team Alpha. We've reached the quarter-mile marker. There's nothing here. No train, no debris, no sign of anything unusual. The tracks are completely clear." Margaret and I exchanged shocked looks. "Alpha, confirm. You're saying there's no train?" "Negative, Command. Tracks are empty. We're proceeding further into the tunnel." Over the next 2 hours, I watched as maintenance teams, emergency crews, and finally police tactical units explored every inch of Blackwood Tunnel. They found nothing. No train, no passengers, no wreckage. The North Line Express and its 500 passengers had simply vanished. But that was impossible. A train is a massive object, hundreds of tons of metal and machinery. It can't just disappear. There had to be an explanation, a logical reason for where it went. At 12:15 p.m., 3 hours after the train had entered the tunnel, something changed. The tracking sensors suddenly registered a signal. "We've got something," a technician shouted. "The train's tracking system just came back online. It's at the three-quarter point of the tunnel, heading toward the south exit." "What? How did it get there?" Margaret demanded. "I don't know. 1 second nothing, the next second it's there, moving at normal speed. Get emergency crews to the south exit now," I ordered. "I want to be there when it comes out." I ran to my car and drove to the south exit, arriving just as the North Line Express emerged from the tunnel into daylight. The train looked completely normal, no damage, no signs of distress. It slowed smoothly and stopped at the designated emergency position. Emergency crews swarmed the train, and I climbed aboard with the first response team. The doors opened with a pneumatic hiss, and I stepped into the passenger car. What I saw made my blood run cold. 500 people sat in perfect silence. Not sleeping, not unconscious, just sitting. Staring straight ahead with blank expressions. Men in business suits, women with shopping bags, teenagers with headphones, elderly passengers with canes. All of them perfectly still, perfectly quiet, like mannequins arranged in seats. "Hello?" I called out. "Can anyone hear me? I'm Detective Carter with the Transit Authority." No response. No movement. 500 people acting like statues. A paramedic checked the nearest passenger, a middle-aged woman in a blue dress. "She's breathing, pulse is normal, pupils respond to light. But she's completely unresponsive to verbal stimuli." I moved through the train car by car, finding the same scene repeated. Children sitting motionless beside worried-looking parents who didn't move. A baby in a carrier, not crying, just staring. Even the conductor and train operator in the front cabin sat at their stations, hands on the controls, eyes forward, saying nothing. "Get medical teams here now," I ordered. "We need to transport all these people to hospitals immediately." As paramedics began carefully moving passengers, I examined the train itself. Everything appeared normal, lights on, systems running, no damage or unusual readings. But in the operator's cabin, I found something that made my investigator instincts scream. The train's computer log showed the journey time, 15 minutes and 43 seconds from north entrance to south exit. Exactly the normal duration for passing through Blackwood Tunnel. But we'd lost contact with this train for 3 hours. Where had it been for those missing 2 hours and 45 minutes? And what had happened to these 500 people that left them in this catatonic state? I picked up one of the passengers' belongings, a briefcase that had fallen to the floor. Inside were normal items, a laptop, some papers, a wallet. But there was something else. A piece of paper with strange symbols drawn on it, symbols I didn't recognize. Not letters or numbers, but geometric patterns that seemed to hurt my eyes when I looked at them too long. I checked other passengers' belongings and found the same thing. Different passengers, different bags, but all of them had papers or notebooks with these same strange symbols. Like they'd all been drawing the same thing. A paramedic called out from 3 cars down. "Detective! You need to see this." I rushed over. She was examining a teenage boy, maybe 16 years old. Unlike the others, his eyes were moving, tracking back and forth rapidly like he was watching something invisible. "Can you hear me?" I asked, kneeling beside him. His mouth moved slightly. A whisper so quiet I had to lean in close to hear it. "The door, we found the door, they showed us, the door in the wall." "What door? What are you talking about?" His eyes suddenly focused on me, and I saw absolute terror in them. "Don't go in the tunnel, detective. Don't ever go in that tunnel again. The door, it's still there, waiting." Then his eyes went blank again, and he fell silent like all the others. I stood up, my heart pounding. A door in the tunnel wall? What did that mean? Margaret's voice crackled over my radio. Carter, we're getting reports from hospitals. The passengers are starting to wake up, but they don't remember anything. No memory of the missing time, no memory of what happened in the tunnel. It's like those 3 hours just vanished from their minds. I looked back at the tunnel entrance, that dark concrete mouth that had swallowed 500 people and returned them changed. Something had happened in there, something that had affected every single person on that train. And somewhere in that 15-mile tunnel was a door. A door that shouldn't exist. A door that 500 people had seen. I made a decision that would change everything. Margaret, I'm going into the tunnel. I need to find whatever it was those passengers saw. Carter, I can't authorize that. We don't know what's in there. That's exactly why I have to go. Get me a maintenance vehicle and a technical team. We're going in, and we're not coming out until we find answers. As I prepared for the descent into Blackwood Tunnel, I couldn't shake the teenage boy's words from my mind. The terror in his eyes had been real. Whatever was in that tunnel, whatever that door was, it had traumatized 500 people so severely that their minds had shut down to protect them. And I was about to go looking for it. Part 2, Descent into Darkness. The maintenance vehicle crawled through Blackwood Tunnel at 20 kilometers per hour, its powerful headlights cutting through darkness so absolute it felt almost solid. I sat in the front with the driver, Marcus Webb, a veteran tunnel engineer who'd worked these passages for 30 years. Behind us were 3 other team members, Elena Rodriguez, a structural engineer, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, a psychologist specializing in mass trauma events, and Officer Sarah Mitchell, my partner from the transit police. I've been through this tunnel 1,000 times, Marcus said, his voice echoing in the confined space. Never seen anything unusual. It's just rock, concrete, and track. Then explain what happened to 500 people, Sarah replied, checking her service weapon for the 3rd time. We'd been driving for 5 minutes, passing the quarter-mile marker where the train had disappeared from sensors. The tunnel looked exactly as it should, reinforced concrete walls, overhead lights spaced every 30 meters, drainage channels running along both sides of the tracks. Nothing unusual. Nothing that suggested anything impossible could happen here. According to the train's last known position before it vanished, Elena said, consulting her tablet, it should have been right around here. Marcus stopped the vehicle. We climbed out, our flashlights adding to the vehicle's lights. The tunnel stretched in both directions, identical and unremarkable. I examined the walls, the ceiling, the floor. Everything looked normal. Fan out, I ordered. Look for anything unusual. Seams in the wall, unusual markings, anything that doesn't belong. We spent 20 minutes examining every surface. The walls were solid concrete, the ceiling reinforced with steel beams, the floor smooth except for the tracks. Nothing seemed out of place. Dr. Tanaka was studying the symbols I'd found on the passengers' papers. Detective Carter, these geometric patterns, they're remarkably similar to certain symbols used in psychological conditioning experiments. Specifically, patterns designed to induce trance states or alter consciousness. You're saying someone deliberately put these people in a trance? Possibly. But to affect 500 people simultaneously would require either a powerful broadcast signal or physical exposure to the symbols at a specific frequency. And even then, the precision required. Over here. Sarah's voice echoed from 30 meters ahead. I found something. We rushed to her position. She was standing next to the tunnel wall, her flashlight pointed at what appeared to be a perfectly ordinary section of concrete. But when I looked closer, I saw it, a seam, almost invisible, running vertically for about 2 meters, then horizontally, then back down. Like the outline of a door. That's not on any of the tunnel schematics, Elena said, pulling up blueprints on her tablet. According to these plans, this section should be solid rock face behind the concrete. Marcus ran his hand along the seam. This concrete is different. Newer than the rest. Someone patched this section, but they did it so well you'd never notice unless you were looking for it. I pressed against the wall. It felt solid, but there was something off about it, a slight hollowness to the sound when I knocked. How do we open it? We don't, Marcus said. Not without heavy equipment. Whatever this is, it's sealed tight. Then we get heavy equipment, I said. I want this wall opened. Now. It took 2 hours to bring in the necessary tools, a concrete saw, pneumatic drills, safety equipment. During that time, I contacted Margaret and filled her in on what we'd found. A door? In the tunnel wall? Her voice was skeptical. Carter, those tunnels were built 60 years ago. Every centimeter has been inspected, maintained, documented. There can't be a door that's not in the records. Then explain the seam we found. Explain what 500 passengers saw that made them draw the same symbols. I'll contact the original construction company, see if there are any archived documents about modifications or maintenance work. But Carter, be careful. If someone went to the trouble of hiding a door in a major transit tunnel, they had a reason. When the cutting equipment arrived, Marcus began carefully scoring the concrete along the seam lines. Sparks flew as the saw bit into the reinforced material. The sound was deafening in the enclosed space, echoing off the tunnel walls until my ears rang. After 30 minutes of cutting, Marcus stepped back. That should do it. But I can't guarantee what's behind there. Could be empty space, could be tons of rock ready to collapse on us. Only one way to find out, I said. We attached steel cables to the cut section and used the maintenance vehicle's winch to pull. At first, nothing happened. Then, with a grinding shriek, the concrete slab began to move. It pulled away from the wall, revealing not rock or empty space, but darkness. A passage. Cold air rushed out, carrying a smell that made my nose wrinkle, sterile and chemical, like a hospital or laboratory. I shined my flashlight into the opening and saw a corridor extending into the rock, concrete-lined and clearly man-made. This is impossible, Elena whispered. This tunnel was carved through solid granite. To excavate a separate passage like this would require major construction, heavy equipment, months of work. We would have known about it. Unless it was built before the tunnel, Dr. Tanaka suggested. Or during the tunnel's construction, hidden in the official work. I stepped toward the opening, but Sarah grabbed my arm. Carter, we should call for backup. We don't know what's in there. That's why we have to look. Those passengers found this door somehow. We need to know what they saw. I entered the passage, the others following behind me. The corridor was about 3 meters wide and 2.5 meters tall, large enough for people to move through comfortably. The walls were smooth concrete, and every 10 meters there were light fixtures, though none were working. Our flashlights revealed a passage that extended at least 50 meters before turning. We walked carefully, checking for trip wires or sensors. The air grew colder as we progressed, and I noticed ventilation grates in the ceiling. This place had its own air system. Look at this, Elena said, examining the wall. These construction techniques, this wasn't built in the 1960s with the main tunnel. This is much older. World War II era, maybe earlier. Why would there be a secret facility from World War II hidden in this mountain? Sarah asked. Lots of reasons, I replied. Weapons research, secure communications, emergency government shelters. The military built hundreds of secret installations during the war. We reached the turn and followed the corridor as it angled deeper into the mountain. After another 30 meters, we emerged into a larger space, a room approximately 20 meters across with a high ceiling. And there, in the center of the room, we found something that made us all stop in our tracks. Equipment. Lots of it. Computer servers, monitoring stations, chairs arranged in rows facing a large wall screen. But all of it was dark, powered down, and covered in a thin layer of dust, like it had been abandoned recently. Someone was using this place, Sarah said, her hand on her weapon. Recently. I examined the equipment. It was sophisticated, modern computers, multiple monitors, complex control panels. This wasn't a World War II installation. This was contemporary, maybe only a few years old. Dr. Tanaka was looking at the wall screen. Detective, I think this was a monitoring station. See these panels? They're designed to display multiple video feeds simultaneously. Monitoring what? If I had to guess. The tunnel. And the trains passing through it. I found a power switch and flipped it. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, with a low hum, the equipment began to boot up. Lights flickered on across the control panels, and the wall screen illuminated, showing a startup sequence. Should we be turning this on? Marcus asked nervously. We need to know what this place was used for, I replied. The screen finished loading, and a menu appeared. Multiple options: video archive, subject monitoring, frequency controls, session logs, emergency protocols. I clicked on video archive. A list of dates appeared, going back 3 years. The most recent entry was from this morning, October 15, 9:32 a.m. The exact time the train had entered the tunnel. I opened the file. Security camera footage filled the screen, showing the interior of a train car. The Northline Express. I recognized some of the passengers from earlier. The timestamp showed 9 hours 32 minutes and 35 seconds, right when the train had disappeared from our tracking systems. And then, on the screen, something happened that made my blood run cold. The train's lights flickered. The passengers looked around, confused. And then, their eyes went blank, their expressions empty, exactly like we'd found them hours later. But the video continued. It showed the passengers sitting motionless for what the timestamp indicated was 2 hours and 43 minutes. Just sitting, staring, completely catatonic. And every 15 minutes, a figure appeared on the screen, someone in a white coat, moving through the train car, checking the passengers, making notes on a tablet. Someone was experimenting on them, Dr. Tanaka said, her voice shaking. Those passengers didn't just experience missing time. They were subjected to some kind of procedure while they were in that state. But how? Sarah demanded. The train was moving through the tunnel. How did someone get on board? I clicked on another menu option, frequency controls. A complex interface appeared, showing waveforms, frequency ranges, and power settings. And there, at the top, a label, Neural Disruption Protocol, Blackwood Tunnel Array. They have equipment in the tunnel, Elena said, understanding dawning. Hidden in the walls, in the infrastructure. When a train passes through, they can activate it, broadcasting frequencies that disrupt the passenger's consciousness. And while they're incapacitated, I added, someone boards the train through this hidden access point and does, what? What were they doing to these people? I clicked on session logs and began reading. What I found made me realize we'd stumbled onto something far bigger and more dangerous than a simple missing train incident. This wasn't the first time. According to the logs, trains had been intercepted in Blackwood Tunnel dozens of times over the past 3 years. Hundreds, maybe thousands of passengers had been subjected to whatever procedure was documented here. And we had no idea who was behind it, or why. Part 3, The Underground Laboratory. I downloaded everything from the computer system onto a secure drive while the others explored the rest of the facility. Sarah found 3 more rooms branching off from the main chamber. One appeared to be living quarters with beds and a small kitchen, another was a medical examination room complete with an operating table and monitoring equipment, and the third was locked with a heavy steel door that required a keycard to open. Marcus, can you get this door open?" I called out. He examined the lock. "This is sophisticated. Military-grade security. I can try to bypass it, but it'll take time." "Do it. I want to see what they're protecting behind there." While Marcus worked on the lock, Dr. Tanaka and Elena examined the medical room. I joined them, documenting everything with my camera. The room was clinical and sterile, with bright overhead lights and stainless steel equipment that looked brand new. "This is a fully functional medical facility," Dr. Tanaka said, checking the cabinets. "Sedatives, muscle relaxants, neural imaging equipment. Whatever they were doing here required sophisticated medical intervention." Elena was examining a whiteboard on the wall covered in equations and diagrams. "Look at this. These are frequency calculations, electromagnetic wavelengths, neural response patterns. They weren't just putting people into a trance, they were mapping their brain activity while doing it." "Why?" I asked. "What's the purpose?" "If I'm reading these notes correctly," Elena said, pointing to annotations on the board, "they were testing something. See here, subject response to frequency 7.83 Hz, 94% compliance. Subject retention of implanted suggestion, 67% after 48 hours. They were trying to implant suggestions into people's minds." "Mind control?" Sarah said from the doorway. "You're telling me someone built a mind control facility inside a transit tunnel?" "Not control exactly," Dr. Tanaka corrected. "Influence. Suggestion. They're using specific frequencies to put subjects into a highly suggestible state, then presumably giving them instructions or information while in that state. It's similar to hypnosis, but involuntary and much more powerful." I thought about the 500 passengers sitting catatonic on that train, their minds blank and receptive. How many people use this tunnel every day? During rush hour? Marcus said, still working on the locked door. 5, maybe 6,000 passengers. Spread across multiple trains. And they've been operating for 3 years, I said, calculating. Even if they only intercepted one train a week, that's thousands of people who've been exposed to this without knowing it. My phone had no signal this deep underground, so I used the facility's computer to send an encrypted message to Margaret at Transit Control. I explained what we'd found and requested immediate assistance: federal investigators, medical teams, technical experts. This was way beyond a simple transit incident now. "Got it," Marcus announced. The locked door clicked and swung open. The room beyond made everything else we'd found seem normal by comparison. It was larger than the others, maybe 15 meters across, and every surface was covered in screens, filing cabinets, and equipment. But it was what hung on the far wall that made us all stop and stare. A map. Enormous, covering the entire wall. But not a map of the city or the transit system. A map of the world. And it was covered in pins. Hundreds of them, in different colors, marking locations across every continent. I moved closer and read the labels. New York, London, Tokyo, Moscow, Sydney, Mumbai, major cities around the globe. And next to each pin was a date and a number. "These are other operations," Sarah whispered. "This isn't just Blackwood Tunnel. They're doing this everywhere." I found a filing cabinet beneath the map labeled Global Coordination and pulled it open. Inside were folders for each marked city, containing reports, photographs, and data sheets. I grabbed the New York folder and opened it. What I read made my hands shake. The operation in Blackwood Tunnel was part of something called Project Threshold. According to the documents, there were 47 active sites worldwide, all of them located in transit systems, tunnels, subway stations, train lines. Each site was equipped with the same neural disruption technology, capable of affecting thousands of people daily. The stated goal of Project Threshold was large-scale behavioral modification for societal optimization. In other words, They were trying to control the thoughts and behaviors of entire populations by exposing commuters to their technology during their daily travels. Who's behind this? Elena asked, reading over my shoulder. Who has the resources and authority to build 47 secret facilities around the world? I flipped through more documents, looking for names, organizations, anything that would identify the people responsible. Most of the paperwork was coded, using designation numbers instead of names. But then I found something, a memo dated 6 months ago, discussing budget allocation for the Blackwood site. At the bottom was a signature, Dr. Richard Vance, Director, Cognitive Research Division, DARPA. DARPA. The Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. The Pentagon's technology research arm, responsible for some of the most classified and controversial projects in U.S. military history. This is a government operation, I said, my voice hollow. Our own government is experimenting on its citizens. We need to get out of here, Sarah said urgently. Now. If this is a federal black project, we're in serious danger just knowing about it. She was right. The moment we'd entered this facility, we'd crossed a line. People who uncovered classified projects like this tended to disappear or have unfortunate accidents. But I couldn't leave. Not yet. Sarah, take the others back to the tunnel. Get to the surface and contact someone, FBI, Department of Justice, whoever you trust. I need to copy more of these files. We need evidence. I'm not leaving you here alone. That's an order, Officer Mitchell. Someone needs to survive to tell this story if something happens to me. She didn't like it, but she nodded. 15 minutes, Carter. Then I'm coming back with a full tactical team. They left, and I was alone in the underground facility. I worked quickly, connecting external drives to multiple computers, copying everything I could find. Files, videos, research data, operational logs. Thousands of documents detailing Project Threshold's activities. As I worked, I reviewed some of the video files. Footage from trains around the world, passengers affected by the neural disruption technology. But some videos showed more, people being examined, interviewed while in their suggestible state, given instructions that they'd carry out later without remembering why. One video caught my attention. It showed a businessman in a suit, sitting in the medical examination room, his eyes unfocused. A voice off camera was speaking to him, "When you return to your office, you will recommend approving the Magellan Initiative. You will argue passionately for it. You will not remember this conversation." The man nodded slowly. "I will recommend the Magellan Initiative." I searched for what the Magellan Initiative was and found a folder labeled with that name. It was a proposed bill in Congress that would increase surveillance capabilities and reduce privacy protections. According to the documents, Project Threshold had been used to influence 17 senators and 43 House representatives to support it. They weren't just experimenting. They were actively manipulating government officials, business leaders, and key decision-makers to shape policy and society according to someone's agenda. A noise made me freeze. Footsteps in the corridor. Multiple people, moving quickly. I'd been so focused on the files that I hadn't heard them approach. I disconnected the drives and shoved them into my pockets, then moved to the doorway and peered out. 3 figures in tactical gear were entering the main chamber, weapons drawn. Not police. Not any agency I recognized. Private security, maybe, or military contractors. "Facility breach confirmed," one of them said into a radio. "Subject still on site. Proceed with containment protocol." They were here for me. And containment protocol probably didn't mean a friendly conversation and an escort out. I looked around the room for another exit but found none. The only way out was through the corridor where the armed team was waiting. I was trapped. Then I noticed something on the computer screen I'd been using. A menu option I hadn't seen before: Emergency System Controls. I clicked it, and a new interface appeared showing various systems in the facility: life support, communications, power distribution. And there, at the bottom, tunnel frequency array, emergency activation. The neural disruption technology. If I activated it, it would affect anyone in the tunnel, including the team that was hunting me. But it would also affect any trains that happened to be passing through. I checked the system status. No trains currently in Blackwood Tunnel. The route was still shut down from this morning's incident. The only people in the tunnel were the security team and whatever support personnel they'd brought with them. It was a terrible choice. Use a mind control weapon on people, or be captured by whoever was behind Project Threshold and likely killed to keep their secrets safe. I activated the array. Through the computer screen, I watched as frequency generators hidden throughout the tunnel powered on. The security team in the corridor suddenly stopped, their weapons lowering. Their eyes went blank, that same empty expression I'd seen on the train passengers. I had maybe 30 seconds before the system shut down automatically, a safety feature to prevent permanent damage. I ran past the incapacitated guards, through the corridor, back toward the hidden entrance we'd cut open. Behind me, I heard voices, more people coming. How many personnel did they have down here? I reached the opening and climbed through into the main tunnel, then ran toward where we'd left the maintenance vehicle. Marcus and the others should have reached the surface by now, should be sending help. But as I reached the vehicle, I found it disabled, its tires slashed, its control panel smashed. They'd made sure I couldn't drive out. I started running down the tunnel on foot, my flashlight beam bouncing ahead of me. Behind me, I heard shouts as the security team recovered from the neural disruption and gave chase. I ran for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, my lungs burning, legs aching. The tunnel seemed endless, stretching forever into darkness ahead. I could hear my pursuers behind me, their footsteps echoing off the concrete walls. Then, ahead, I saw light. Not tunnel lights, but daylight. The south entrance was less than 100 meters away. I pushed myself harder, sprinting now despite the pain. 50 meters. 30. 20. I burst out of the tunnel into the afternoon sun, nearly colliding with Margaret and a dozen transit police officers who were preparing to enter. "Carter!" Margaret shouted. "What?" "Run!" I yelled. "Everyone back. They're right behind me." But when I looked back at the tunnel entrance, no one emerged. The security team had stopped at the edge of the darkness, staying hidden inside where they couldn't be seen or identified. I collapsed onto the ground, gasping for air, clutching the data drives in my pockets. I had the evidence. I had proof of Project Threshold's existence and activities. Now I just had to survive long enough to expose it. Part 4, The Conspiracy Deepens. Margaret rushed me to a secure location, a transit authority facility 40 miles from Blackwood Tunnel, guarded by officers she personally trusted. I was physically unharmed but mentally reeling from what I'd discovered. As paramedics checked my vital signs, I connected the data drives to a laptop and began reviewing the files I'd copied, with Margaret watching over my shoulder. "This is insane," she muttered as surveillance videos played. "How long has this been going on?" 3 years at Blackwood. But based on these documents, the overall project started almost a decade ago. Small tests initially, then expanding to multiple cities once they perfected the technology. Margaret's phone rang. She answered, listened, then her face went pale. "What do you mean they're all gone?" She hung up and turned to me. "Sarah, Marcus, Elena, and Dr. Tanaka never made it out of the tunnel. Backup teams found the maintenance vehicle, but no sign of them. They've vanished." My stomach lurched. I'd sent them ahead to safety, and now they were missing. DARPA has them. Project Threshold personnel took them. We need to contact the FBI, Homeland Security. "No," I interrupted. "Look at these files. Project Threshold has people embedded in every major law enforcement and intelligence agency. If we go through official channels, we'll be flagged immediately, and this evidence will disappear. We need someone outside the system. I thought about who I could trust. Then I remembered, investigative journalists. People whose job was to expose exactly this kind of corruption. I pulled up a secure messaging app and contacted Marcus Reeves, no relation to the software engineer from my previous case, a journalist at the Washington Post who'd broken several major government scandal stories. "Carter," Margaret said carefully, "if you're right about the scope of this project, going public could trigger a national security crisis. There will be consequences. There are 500 people who were experimented on this morning alone. Thousands more over the past 3 years. Millions potentially affected by the policies these people have manipulated. The consequences of not exposing this are worse." Marcus Reeves responded to my message within minutes. We arranged a secure meeting for that evening at a location of his choosing. But I had 6 hours to wait, and I couldn't shake the thought of my team members in the hands of Project Threshold. I accessed the facility's computer systems again, searching the copied files for any information about detainment protocols or holding facilities. What I found was a document titled Asset Containment Procedures that detailed what happened to people who discovered Project Threshold. According to the protocol, unauthorized individuals who learned about the project were classified as compromised assets. They were to be detained, subjected to memory restructuring, using an enhanced version of the neural disruption technology, and then released with false memories implanted to explain their missing time. In other words, Sarah and the others were being brainwashed right now. The document listed 3 containment facilities within 100 miles of each active Project Threshold site. For Blackwood, the facilities were an abandoned military base 60 miles north, a private research laboratory disguised as a pharmaceutical company 40 miles east, and a secure wing in the basement of Metropolitan General Hospital. The hospital. That was closest and would be easiest to infiltrate. But it was also the most obvious choice, which meant it might be a trap. "Margaret, I need tactical gear and a team I can trust absolutely. People with no connection to federal agencies." "Carter, you're planning a rescue mission? That's suicide. These people have military-grade security and technology we don't understand. I'm not leaving my team in there to have their minds erased. I sent them ahead to safety, and they were captured because of me. I'm getting them back." Margaret studied me for a long moment, then sighed. "I know a few people. Former military, now private security. They don't ask too many questions, and they're not on any federal payroll. But Carter, this is off the books. If it goes wrong, I can't protect you. I'm already in too deep for protection. Make the calls." 2 hours later, I was briefing a team of 5 former Special Forces operators in a warehouse across the city. I showed them the facility layouts from the stolen files, explained the neural disruption technology and how to disable it, and outlined our mission: infiltrate Metropolitan General's secure basement level, locate my team, extract them before their memories could be erased. The team leader, a grizzled veteran named Jack Morrison, studied the plans. "This basement level, according to your files, it's not on any public hospital blueprints. Which means it was built secretly, probably during hospital construction or major renovations. Security will be tight, probably separate from the main hospital systems. Can we get in? Everything has a weakness. Hospitals have deliveries, maintenance crews, shift changes. We find the pattern, we exploit it." He looked at his team. "Full tactical loadout, non-lethal preferred but lethal authorized if necessary. We go in at 0200 hours when staffing is lowest. In and out in 30 minutes maximum." "What about the neural disruption technology?" asked one of the operators, a woman named Chen. "If they activate it while we're inside, we're done." I pulled out a small device I'd assembled from components in the Transit Authority workshop. This is a white noise generator tuned to counter the frequency range Project Threshold uses. It won't completely block the effect, but it should reduce exposure enough that you can fight through it. Everyone wears one. We spent the next few hours planning every detail. Insertion route, extraction points, contingencies if we were discovered. As midnight approached, I met with Marcus Reeves, the journalist, at a secure location he'd arranged, a lawyer's office that had encrypted communications and privileged confidentiality protections. I gave him copies of everything I'd found, documents, videos, research data, the global map showing all 47 sites. His eyes grew wider as he reviewed the material. This is Carter, if this is real, this is the biggest story of the century. Mind control technology used on civilians, government officials manipulated, a global conspiracy involving multiple nations. Are you absolutely certain of your sources? I took this directly from their computer systems inside the facility. It's real. I'll need to verify independently, find corroborating sources, but if I can confirm even half of this. He looked up at me. You understand that the moment I publish this, you become the most wanted person in America? Every intelligence agency, every law enforcement branch, everyone connected to Project Threshold will be hunting you. I know. But I need you to hold the story until tomorrow evening. I'm extracting my team tonight, and I can't risk alerting Project Threshold before we're clear. Agreed. But Carter, after this breaks, go underground. Disappear. These people don't play by rules. At 0200 hours, our team assembled outside Metropolitan General Hospital. The massive complex sprawled across several city blocks, its towers lit against the night sky. Somewhere beneath it, in a secret facility that didn't officially exist, my team was being held. We entered through a service entrance that Chen had scouted earlier, a loading dock used for medical supply deliveries. Security was light this time of night, just one guard who we incapacitated without raising alarms. Inside, we moved quickly through maintenance corridors, following the blueprints to where the secret basement level should be. According to the schematics, Morrison whispered, there should be an access elevator here, hidden behind what looks like a utility closet. We found it exactly where the files indicated, a steel door marked, authorized personnel only, with a keycard reader. Chen pulled out a bypass device and went to work. This encryption is serious, she muttered. Military contractor level. Whoever built this didn't want anyone getting in. It took 5 tense minutes, during which I was certain hospital security would discover us. But finally, the lock clicked, and the door opened, revealing an elevator that descended far deeper than any hospital floor should go. We crowded into the elevator. Morrison pressed the single unmarked button, and we dropped. Down, down, much farther than I expected. When the doors opened, we emerged into a corridor that looked nothing like a hospital, all concrete and steel, with high-security doors and cameras everywhere. White noise generators on, Morrison ordered. Stay tight, watch your sectors. We moved through the facility, incapacitating guards and security personnel before they could raise alarms. The neural disruption technology tried to activate twice, but our generators protected us enough that we could push through the disorienting effects. Then we found them. A row of rooms with observation windows, and inside each room, a hospital bed. Sarah lay in one room, electrodes attached to her head, unconscious. Marcus, Elena, and Dr. Tanaka occupied the other 3 rooms, in similar states. Medical monitoring equipment, one of Morrison's team observed. They're in induced comas, probably for the memory restructuring process. We breached the rooms and began disconnecting them from the equipment. But as we prepared to move them, alarms suddenly blared throughout the facility. Red lights flashed in the corridors. They know we're here, Morrison said. We've got maybe 2 minutes before response teams arrive. Move. We carried my team members toward the elevator, but when we arrived, it was already descending, security personnel coming down. Morrison redirected us to an emergency stairwell that, according to the blueprints, should lead to a service tunnel. Behind us, I heard shouts and running footsteps. Project Threshold security forces were mobilizing. We climbed the stairs, carrying our unconscious burdens, as gunfire erupted below us. Morrison's rear guard engaged the pursuers, buying us time. We burst through a door at the top of the stairs into what appeared to be an underground parking structure. Our extraction vehicle was supposed to be here, but the space was empty. "Change of plans," Morrison said. "We go out through the main entrance, blend with emergency vehicles. Chen, call in a fire alarm. Create chaos." Within seconds, fire alarms were blaring throughout the hospital complex. Confused staff and patients began evacuating. We merged with the crowd, our tactical gear hidden under emergency blankets, carrying my team on evacuation stretchers we'd grabbed. In the confusion and darkness, we reached our backup extraction point, a van parked 3 blocks away. We loaded everyone inside and drove away as police cars and fire trucks raced toward the hospital. "Did we get them all?" I asked, checking Sarah's pulse. "Still unconscious but stable." "All 4 extracted," Morrison confirmed. "But Carter, they'll wake up soon, and when they do, we need to be far away from here. Project Threshold will be looking for them, and for us." We drove to a safe house Margaret had arranged, a cabin in the mountains 2 hours from the city. As dawn broke, my team began waking up. Sarah was first, her eyes fluttering open in confusion. "Carter? What, where are we?" "The tunnel, there were people." Her memories were fragmented, confused from the drugs and interrupted memory restructuring. "You're safe," I told her. "All of you. But we need to talk about what happened, about what you remember from the facility." Over the next hours, as they fully recovered, each of them shared their experiences. They remembered being taken from the tunnel by armed personnel, brought to the underground facility, questioned about what they'd seen. The last thing they remembered was being strapped to examination tables before losing consciousness. "They were going to erase our memories," Dr. Tanaka said, her voice shaking. "Make us forget everything about Project Threshold. If you hadn't come for us." "We're not safe yet," I said. "Marcus Reeves is publishing the story tonight. When that breaks, all hell is going to break loose. We need to prepare." That evening, the Washington Post's website crashed from overwhelming traffic as the story went live. "Secret Government Mind Control Project Exposed, Thousands of Civilians Subjected to Neural Manipulation in Transit Systems Worldwide." The article included documents, videos, testimony from me and my team, everything I'd stolen from the Blackwood facility. Within an hour, every major news outlet was covering the story. Within 2 hours, emergency sessions were being called in Congress. Within 3 hours, DARPA was issuing denials, and the Pentagon was scrambling to contain the damage. And within 4 hours, arrest warrants were issued for me and everyone on my team for theft of classified materials, unauthorized access to government facilities, and violations of national security laws. We had exposed Project Threshold to the world. Now we had to survive the consequences. Part 5: The Public Awakening. The cabin's television flickered with breaking news coverage as the world reacted to the Project Threshold revelations. Every channel showed the same images: the secret facility inside Blackwood Tunnel, surveillance footage of passengers being manipulated, the global map showing 47 active sites. My face was everywhere, wanted by the FBI, wanted by Homeland Security, labeled a traitor by government officials and a hero by civil liberties groups. "The President will address the nation at 8 p.m., a news anchor announced. Sources within the administration suggest denials of any knowledge of Project Threshold, with officials claiming this was a rogue operation conducted without proper oversight. They're going to throw DARPA under the bus," Sarah said, watching from the cabin's worn sofa. "Make it look like Dr. Vance and his team acted without authorization." "It won't work," Dr. Tanaka replied, studying her laptop. The documents Carter retrieved show authorization signatures from Pentagon officials, encrypted communications with senior government leaders. This went all the way to the top. My secure phone buzzed, another message from Marcus Reeves. He'd been contacted by a dozen whistleblowers since the story broke, people who'd worked on Project Threshold or similar programs, all eager to share information now that the secret was out. Congressional hearing scheduled for next week, I told the others, reading Marcus's message. They want testimony from everyone involved. Us, the passengers from Flight 227, the Northline Express, DARPA personnel, government officials. Will we even survive until next week? Elena asked. She was right to be worried. The arrest warrants were just the beginning. Project Threshold had operated in shadows for a decade, built on secrecy and deniability. People who threatened that secrecy had a tendency to meet unfortunate ends. Margaret called on a secure line. Carter, I've been reviewing transit system logs for the past 3 years, looking at patterns. The trains that were intercepted weren't random. Project Threshold was specifically targeting trains carrying particular passengers, business executives, politicians, journalists, scientists. People with influence. Confirming what we already suspected. They were using the neural disruption to manipulate decision-makers. It's worse than that. I cross-referenced the passenger lists with major political and economic events from the past 3 years. The Magellan Initiative that passed Congress last year? 23 senators who voted for it had all traveled through Blackwood Tunnel within 2 weeks before the vote. The merger between TechCorp and Global Industries that everyone said made no business sense. Both CEOs had taken the Northline Express in the month before they agreed to terms. The scope was staggering. How many decisions, how many events, how many changes to society had been quietly manipulated by Project Threshold? Morrison and his security team were monitoring police scanners and federal communications, trying to gauge how aggressively we were being hunted. Multiple agencies coordinating search efforts, he reported. They've frozen your assets, flagged all your credit cards and IDs. Anyone associated with you is under surveillance. They're serious about bringing you in. What about the other sites? I asked. The 46 facilities around the world. Has anyone investigated them? Marcus's next message answered that question, international response mixed. UK police found the London facility abandoned, equipment stripped. Tokyo site still operational, authorities facing legal challenges about search warrants. Russian government denying any knowledge of Moscow facility. This is going to take months to unravel. Of course Project Threshold wouldn't go down easily. They'd had advance warning the moment the story broke, time to destroy evidence, move personnel, cover their tracks. We'd expose them, but proving the full extent of their crimes would be another battle entirely. The president's address started at 8 p.m. sharp. We watched as he appeared on screen, solemn and serious, the American flag behind him. My fellow Americans, today disturbing allegations have been made about a classified research project conducted by the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. I want to assure you that I have ordered a complete investigation into these claims. If any agency of our government has acted improperly or without proper authorization, those responsible will be held accountable. Notice he said, if, Sarah muttered. Classic non-denial denial. The president continued, however, we must also consider the source of these allegations. Detective James Carter and his associates are wanted for theft of classified materials and violations of national security laws. Their claims have not been independently verified, and we must be cautious about accepting information obtained through illegal means. They're trying to discredit us, Elena said. It won't work, Dr. Tanaka replied. Too many corroborating sources, too much physical evidence. The facility exists, the equipment exists, the passengers who were affected exist. They can't make all of that disappear. But they could try. Over the next hours, we watched as government officials, military spokespeople, and intelligence experts appeared on news programs to cast doubt on the story. They questioned the authenticity of the documents, suggested the videos could be fabricated, implied that I was mentally unstable or part of a foreign disinformation campaign. Standard playbook, Morrison observed. Attack the messenger, muddy the waters, wait for public attention to move to the next crisis. If they can drag this out long enough, make it complicated enough, most people will stop caring. He was right. But we couldn't let that happen. 500 people had been experimented on just yesterday. Thousands more over the years. The truth had to come out fully, completely, undeniably. My phone buzzed again. This time, a message from an unknown number. Detective Carter, my name is Dr. Lisa Monroe. I worked on Project Threshold for 2 years before my conscience couldn't take it anymore. I have additional files, evidence that wasn't stored in the Blackwood facility. I want to help expose this program completely, but I'm afraid for my life. Can we meet? I showed the message to the others. Could be a trap, Sarah said immediately. Or it could be genuine, Dr. Tanaka countered. The story breaking has probably emboldened other insiders to come forward. I composed a careful response, Dr. Monroe, I'm willing to meet, but only in a public place with witnesses. And I'll need some verification that you actually worked on the project. Her reply came within minutes, including a photo of her DARPA identification badge and a document that matched the style and format of the Project Threshold files I'd stolen. The document detailed experiments conducted at a facility in Chicago that weren't in any of the files I had, new information that could be verified independently. It looks legitimate, Elena said, examining the document. The technical specifications match what we saw in Blackwood. She knows details that weren't in the published story. We arranged to meet Dr. Monroe the following afternoon in a crowded coffee shop in the city center, public enough that Project Threshold couldn't make us disappear without witnesses, busy enough that we could blend in. Morrison and his team would provide security, watching from multiple positions to ensure we weren't walking into an ambush. That night, I barely slept. I kept thinking about the teenage boy on the train who'd whispered warnings about the door in the tunnel wall. How many other victims were out there, traumatized by what had been done to them, unable to talk about it because their memories had been erased or distorted. The next morning brought more news. The FBI had raided DARPA headquarters, seizing computers and files. Dr. Richard Vance, the director named in the documents, had disappeared, last seen boarding a private jet to a country without U.S. extradition. Several other Project Threshold personnel had also vanished overnight. They're running, Sarah said. Abandoning ship before they can be arrested. But some couldn't run. Junior personnel, contractors, security guards who'd worked at the facilities but didn't have the resources or connections to disappear. The FBI was rounding them up, and some were starting to talk, confirming details from the leaked documents. At 2 p.m., we arrived at the coffee shop for the meeting with Dr. Monroe. Morrison's team had scouted the location and confirmed no obvious surveillance or ambush setup. I entered wearing a baseball cap and sunglasses, trying to blend in despite my face being all over the news. Dr. Monroe sat at a corner table, a nervous woman in her 40s with dark hair and tired eyes. She looked up as I approached, relief flooding her face. Detective Carter. Thank you for meeting me. I've been terrified since the story broke, certain that someone would come for me. I sat across from her. Tell me about your work on Project Threshold. For the next hour, she provided details that filled in gaps in our understanding. The project had started as legitimate research into neural plasticity and learning enhancement, funded by DARPA to help soldiers recover from traumatic brain injuries. But somewhere along the way, it had been weaponized, transformed into a tool for manipulation and control. Dr. Vance became obsessed with the idea that society could be optimized, Monroe explained. He believed that if key decision-makers could be subtly influenced, guided toward correct choices, we could solve major problems, prevent wars, address climate change, reduce inequality. He saw it as benevolent manipulation for the greater good. But who decides what's correct? Dr. Tanaka asked. Who chooses which decisions to influence? Exactly the question I kept asking. Vance had a council of advisors, politicians, business leaders, academics, who would identify priority targets and optimal outcomes. Basically, a shadow government deciding how society should be shaped, then using Project Threshold to make it happen. She pulled out a USB drive. This contains the membership list of that council, along with communications showing what they've influenced over the past 3 years. Elections, legislation, corporate mergers, international agreements. Detective, Project Threshold didn't just experiment on people. It's been steering the course of history. I took the drive, my hands trembling slightly. This was bigger than mind control technology. This was proof of a conspiracy that had infiltrated the highest levels of power in multiple countries. Why are you coming forward now? Sarah asked. You could have stayed silent, protected yourself. Monroe's eyes filled with tears. Because I have a daughter. She's 16, and last month she took a train through one of our facilities. I watched on the monitors as she was subjected to the neural disruption. My own daughter, affected by technology one helped develop. That's when I knew I couldn't be part of this anymore. We spent another hour debriefing Monroe, extracting every detail she could remember. Then Morrison interrupted, his face grim. We need to go. Now. Federal agents just arrived outside, multiple vehicles, tactical teams. Someone tipped them off. We ran for the back exit, but agents were already covering it. We were trapped, surrounded in a coffee shop full of terrified civilians. Through the window, I could see news cameras arriving. Someone had alerted the media too. This was it. The moment where I either surrendered or resisted. Either way, the consequences would be severe. But then something unexpected happened. The coffee shop's other patrons, realizing what was happening, started pulling out their phones. Not to record us, but to live stream the confrontation. Within seconds, thousands of people were watching online. Detective Carter, a voice called from outside through a megaphone. This is the FBI. You're surrounded. Come out with your hands up. I looked at Sarah, at my team, at Dr. Monroe. Then I made a decision. I stepped toward the door, hands raised, and walked outside into the glare of media lights and armed federal agents. But I wasn't surrendering quietly. My name is Detective James Carter, I announced, speaking directly to the cameras, to the thousands of people watching online. I'm wanted for exposing Project Threshold, a government mind control program that has experimented on thousands of innocent civilians. I'm being arrested not for breaking the law, but for revealing the truth. The real criminals are still free, the officials who authorized this program, the scientists who implemented it, the shadow council that has been manipulating world events. My arrest won't silence the truth. It will only prove how desperate they are to hide it. Federal agents moved forward to take me into custody. As handcuffs closed around my wrists, I saw the view counters on the phones pointed at me, over 100,000 people watching live, recording everything, ensuring that whatever happened next would be witnessed by the world. They could arrest me, but they couldn't stop the truth from spreading. Project Threshold's secrets were out, and no amount of government denial or spin could put them back in the bottle. The question was, would truth be enough? Or would those in power find a way to survive this scandal, to weather the storm and continue their hidden manipulations through other means? As I was pushed into a federal vehicle, I caught a glimpse of Dr. Monroe being led away separately. At least her information was secured, copied and distributed to multiple journalists and investigators. Even if we were silenced, others would continue the fight. The vehicle drove away from the coffee shop, surrounded by police escort, cameras following our entire journey. Inside, a federal agent removed my handcuffs and sat across from me. Detective Carter, he said quietly. My name is Agent Mark Chen, FBI. And I want you to know that not everyone in law enforcement supports what Project Threshold has done. There are those of us who believe in actual justice, actual truth. I studied his face, looking for deception. Then why am I under arrest? Because the people who run Project Threshold still have power, still have influence. But that's changing. Every hour, more whistleblowers come forward. Every day, more evidence surfaces. You started something that can't be stopped now. You just have to survive long enough to see it through. He leaned forward. There are hearings scheduled for next week. Congress, Justice Department, international tribunals. They'll want your testimony, and they'll want it public. But between now and then, there will be people who don't want you to testify. People with resources and motivation to make sure you never reach that witness stand. Are you offering to protect me? I'm offering to make sure you survive to tell your story. Because that story needs to be told, completely and publicly. No more secrets, no more shadows. Project Threshold has to end, and that only happens if people like you have the courage to stand up and tell the truth, no matter the cost. I looked out the vehicle's window at the city passing by, at the ordinary people going about their lives, unaware of how close they'd come to losing their freedom of thought itself. And I realized Agent Chen was right. This wasn't just about exposing one secret program. It was about drawing a line, establishing that there are some powers governments should never have, some boundaries that must never be crossed. Project Threshold had crossed those boundaries. And now, it was time to hold those responsible accountable, no matter how powerful they were, no matter how deeply entrenched their influence. The fight was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. Part 6, Testimony and Truth. The congressional hearing chamber was packed with journalists, cameras, and spectators. Every major news network carried the proceedings live. International media had sent correspondents. This was history being made in real time, and the world was watching. I sat at the witness table, flanked by my legal team, civil liberties lawyers who'd taken my case pro bono, believing in the importance of exposing Project Threshold. Behind me sat Sarah, Marcus, Elena, and Dr. Tanaka, all prepared to testify about their experiences. Dr. Monroe was in protective custody, scheduled to testify tomorrow. The committee chairman, Senator Patricia Williams, gavelled the hearing to order. This emergency session of the Senate's Select Committee on Intelligence has been convened to investigate allegations regarding a classified program known as Project Threshold. Detective Carter, you're under oath. Please tell us in your own words what you discovered. For the next 3 hours, I walked the committee through everything. The disappearance of the Northline Express, the discovery of the hidden facility in Blackwood Tunnel, the neural disruption technology, the global network of 47 sites, the evidence of manipulation of government officials and business leaders. I presented the documents, played the videos, showed the global map. Every piece of evidence laid out methodically, undeniably. The committee members listened with expressions ranging from horror to barely concealed anger. Detective Carter, Senator James Mitchell interrupted, you admit that you illegally accessed a classified facility, stole government property, and revealed national security information. How can we trust testimony obtained through criminal means? Senator, with respect, the only crime here was what was being done to innocent civilians without their knowledge or consent. Project Threshold wasn't protecting national security, it was violating the fundamental rights of thousands of people. If exposing that makes me a criminal, then I'm proud to be one. The chamber erupted in applause from the gallery. Senator Williams gavelled for order. Furthermore, I continued, every allegation I've made has been corroborated by physical evidence, witness testimony, and admissions from Project Threshold personnel who've come forward. This isn't speculation or conspiracy theory. This is documented fact. Senator Williams nodded. We've reviewed the evidence the detective has provided, and I must say, it's compelling and disturbing. We have representatives from DARPA and the Pentagon here to answer questions. Director Collins, please approach. A stern-faced man in a military uniform took a seat at the witness table beside me. General Robert Collins, current director of DARPA, looked supremely uncomfortable. General Collins, did DARPA authorize Project Threshold? Senator Williams asked. The program began as legitimate research into neural plasticity and cognitive enhancement, properly authorized and funded. However, it appears that Dr. Richard Vance exceeded his authority and expanded the project beyond its approved scope. That's a convenient answer, Senator Mitchell pressed. Are you saying Dr. Vance built 47 secret facilities around the world, deployed advanced technology in major transit systems, and conducted experiments on thousands of civilians, all without DARPA's knowledge or approval? Collins hesitated. The project operated under extreme classification protocols. Information was compartmentalized. It's possible that senior leadership wasn't fully aware of all activities. Possible? Senator Williams's voice dripped with skepticism. General, we have documents with authorization signatures from Pentagon officials, budget allocation requests that went through proper channels, quarterly reports that were reviewed by oversight committees. This program didn't happen in a vacuum. People knew, people approved, people funded it. The hearing continued for 6 more hours, with testimony from other witnesses confirming different aspects of Project Threshold. A former security contractor described the equipment installed in the tunnels. A DARPA scientist explained how the neural disruption technology worked. Passengers from the Northline Express described their experiences of missing time and fragmented memories. By the end of the day, the narrative was clear: Project Threshold had been a coordinated, authorized program that had gone beyond its original mandate and become something monstrous. The question now was accountability: who would face consequences? That evening, back in protective custody at a secure federal facility, I watched news coverage of the hearing. Public outrage was building. Protests had erupted in dozens of cities demanding answers and accountability. Civil liberties groups were filing lawsuits. International governments were launching their own investigations. You did it, Sarah said, sitting beside me. You exposed them. Project Threshold is finished. Is it? I wasn't so sure. Dr. Vance is still missing. Most of the senior personnel have disappeared or lawyered up. The facilities have been stripped of evidence. Yes, we've exposed the program, but will anyone actually pay for what they did? Agent Chen, who'd been assigned to my security detail, entered the room. Detective, there's been a development. We've located Dr. Vance. Where? Switzerland. He's requesting asylum, claiming he was following orders and fears persecution if he returns to the U.S. But there's more. He says he has information, insurance files that prove senior government officials not only knew about Project Threshold but actively directed it. He's willing to turn over that information in exchange for immunity. This was the break we needed. If Vance testified, if he provided evidence implicating higher-level officials, we could trace the conspiracy all the way to its source. What are the chances he actually has this information and isn't just bluffing? Given what we know about his paranoia and preparation, I'd say it's likely he kept insurance files. The question is whether the government is willing to grant him immunity in exchange for testimony that could bring down some very powerful people. Over the next days, negotiations proceeded in secret. Vance wanted immunity from prosecution, witness protection, and guarantees of safety. The Justice Department wanted his complete cooperation and access to all his files. It was a delicate dance, with both sides knowing that the truth about Project Threshold's origins could reshape the political landscape. Meanwhile, more whistleblowers continued emerging. Dr. Monroe testified about the Shadow Council that had directed Project Threshold's targets and objectives. A Pentagon analyst revealed that military intelligence had used the technology to manipulate foreign diplomats during negotiations. A corporate executive admitted his company had paid for access to the neural disruption technology to influence business rivals. The scope kept expanding. What had started as a story about a missing train had become an expose of corruption that touched every level of government and business. On the fifth day of hearings, something unexpected happened. Senator Mitchell, who'd been one of the most skeptical committee members, asked to speak privately with me and Agent Chen. "I need to come clean about something," he said, his face pale. 3 months ago, I traveled through the Blackwood Tunnel on my way to a voting session. When I reached the Capitol, I found myself arguing passionately for the Magellan Initiative, legislation I had previously opposed. At the time, I thought I'd simply been persuaded by new information. But now, looking at the passenger logs you've provided, I see my name there. I was one of the targets. Senator, are you saying Project Threshold manipulated your vote? I'm saying I can't be certain that any decision I made after that train ride was truly my own. And if they did it to me, how many other legislators were affected? How many votes, how many laws, were influenced by this program? This was huge. A sitting senator admitting he may have been manipulated undermined the legitimacy of legislation passed in recent years. It raised constitutional questions about the validity of laws and decisions made by compromised officials. Senator, would you be willing to testify publicly about this? He nodded grimly. I have to. The American people deserve to know that their elected representatives may have been controlled like puppets. Whatever political consequences I face, they're nothing compared to the damage done to our democracy. Senator Mitchell's testimony the next day was explosive. He wasn't the only one, 4 other members of Congress came forward with similar stories, all of them having traveled through Project Threshold facilities before making controversial decisions they now questioned. The constitutional crisis was upon us. How do you trust a government when you can't be sure its leaders were acting of their own free will? How do you have faith in laws passed by manipulated legislators? The only way forward is complete transparency, Senator Williams declared in an emergency session. Every official who traveled through a Project Threshold facility must undergo independent evaluation. Every decision made after potential exposure must be reviewed. And those responsible for this program must face full accountability under the law. That night, news broke that Dr. Vance had agreed to terms. He would return to the U.S., provide all his files, and testify in exchange for reduced charges and witness protection. Whatever secrets he'd kept, whatever insurance he'd maintained, it was all about to become public. This is what we fought for, Sarah said, watching the news. Complete exposure, full accountability. But I couldn't shake a feeling of unease. Project Threshold had operated in the shadows for a decade, built by some of the most powerful people in the world. Were they really going to let it all collapse without a fight? Or was there another move coming, something we hadn't anticipated? My phone buzzed with a message from Marcus Reeves, the journalist. "Carter, I just received a package. No return address, delivered by courier. Inside are documents that suggest Project Threshold wasn't the only program. There were others, still operational, even more invasive. Someone wants us to know this isn't over." I showed the message to Agent Chen. He read it, then looked at me grimly. Project Threshold was probably just the beginning. If there are other programs, other technologies, other ways they've found to manipulate and control people, then we keep fighting, I said. We expose every program, every secret, every abuse of power. However long it takes, however dangerous it gets. Because that was the real lesson of Project Threshold. Power corrupts, and unchecked power corrupts absolutely. The only defense is eternal vigilance, constant questioning, and the courage to speak truth even when it's dangerous. The North Line Express had vanished for 3 hours and returned with 500 traumatized passengers. That single incident had cracked open a conspiracy that spanned the globe. Now it was up to all of us, investigators, journalists, citizens, to make sure it never happened again. Dr. Vance's testimony was scheduled for tomorrow. Whatever he revealed would either end this nightmare or show us just how deep it truly went. I tried to sleep that night, but couldn't. I kept thinking about that teenage boy on the train, whispering warnings about the door in the tunnel wall. He'd been right to be afraid. Behind that door lay horrors most people never imagined, the complete violation of human autonomy, the theft of free will itself. We'd found the door. We'd opened it. Now we had to make sure it stayed open, exposed to light, where its darkness could never hide again. Tomorrow would bring more revelations. More shocking truths. More evidence of how close we'd come to losing everything that makes us free. But tonight, I allowed myself a moment of hope. Because the truth was out, the world was watching, and people were demanding change. Project Threshold had wanted to control humanity's future. Instead, humanity was taking that future back.